In A New Hope, there is a moment that has fascinated fans for decades. Darth Vader, the Dark Lord of the Sith and the Emperor's personal enforcer, openly obeys a direct order from Grand Moff Tarkin. It is one of the few times in the films where Vader appears to be commanded by someone who is not Palpatine. The moment has led to many viewers to wonder whether Tarkin actually outranked Vader or whether Vader served under him in some formal military sense. But the truth is far more interesting. Vader obeyed Tarkin in that moment because the Grand Moff was placed in full charge of the Death Star project, and aboard the battle station, Tarkin's authority was absolute. Vader recognized the authority not because he was beneath Tarkin, but because Tarkin was, for all intents and purposes, the captain of the ship. And the ship was the Death Star itself. If the setting had changed, everything would have been different. If that conversation had taken place aboard the Executor, Vader's own flagship, then Tarkin's order would have been met with a very different reaction from the Dark Lord. And this was something that Tarkin himself almost certainly understood. Their relationship was based on mutual respect, not a hierarchy. Tarkin commanded the station. Vader allowed the structure to function because it served the Emperor's will. But this raises a much deeper question. If Vader only obeyed Tarkin because of the context of the Death Star, then what exactly was Vader's rank within the Empire? Who had the ability to give him orders? And why do we see moments where the Dark Lord appears to follow directives from individuals who, on paper, should never have been able to command him at all? This is where the rug is pulled out from the entire Imperial hierarchy. Because Darth Vader did not serve under Tarkin, he did not serve under any Moff, any Admiral, any Governor, or any branch of the Imperial Military. In reality, Vader outranked every single one of them. Only Emperor Palpatine stood above him. So the real question becomes something more revealing. If Vader was truly second only to the Emperor, then why did he ever take orders from anyone? Why do we find political figures, Imperial messengers, Inquisitors, or elite protectors delivering commands that Vader actually follows? And what do these rare exceptions tell us about how the Empire actually functioned behind the eyes of the public? In this video, we will break down every figure in the Empire whom Vader obeyed, whether by force, by circumstance, or by choice, and we will reveal the deeper truth about why a man who outranked the entire galaxy still followed orders from those who technically served beneath him. So what exactly was Vader's official rank? If he did not fit neatly into the structure of the Imperial Military, and if he was not a subordinate to the Moffs or Admirals who filled out the hierarchy, then what position did he hold technically? Vader's official title within the Empire was Supreme Commander of the Imperial Military. The position was not a standard naval rank or a bureaucratic office. It was the apex of the entire military chain of command. Every admiral, every general, every stormtrooper, every sector group, and every fleet ultimately answered to Vader. Even the Grand Admirals, the most elite office in the Empire, existed beneath this role. They served as master tacticians and strategic advisors, but the Supreme Commander was the figure who unified all Imperial forces under one will. Vader's duties were enormous. He oversaw the deployments of fleets across the stars. He acted as the Emperor's voice in military affairs. He was responsible for the execution of large-scale operations, the suppression of rebellion, the elimination of Jedi, and the enforcement of the Emperor's doctrine. Vader was the executor of the Imperial authority on a galactic scale. His position combined political influence, military command, and Sith oversight into one singular identity. And the most revealing part of this title is what happened after Vader's death, because the role of the Supreme Commander did not die with Vader. The role continued. It became a permanent cornerstone of the Imperial remnant. When the Empire fractured after the Battle of Endor, the remaining factions re-established the position in order to restore unity and a centralized control. And it was Grand Admiral Thrawn who eventually would claim the title for himself. Thrawn did not become a Moff or a political governor. He stepped into Vader's old role. The mantle of the Supreme Commander passed from the Dark Lord of the Sith to the greatest military mind the Empire ever produced. And even after Thrawn's death, the title persisted within the remnant for decades. It became a symbol of Imperial legitimacy, a reminder that the Empire always needed a single figure who could command all branches and all regions with one unified voice. This is how powerful Vader's position really was. It shaped the Empire. It shaped the remnants of the Empire after his death, and it remained the key to understanding why Vader never answered to anyone besides Palpatine, and why the rare moments where he obeyed others' orders carry so much weight in the lore. But now that we understand Vader's official rank as Supreme Commander, we can answer the real question. Who in the Empire possessed enough authority, influence, or proximity to the Emperor that Vader would ever take orders from them? Because on paper, the answer should be a simple one. No one but Palpatine outranked him. Yet history shows that the picture is much more complex. There were individuals who issued directives that Vader followed, even though by rank, they should have bowed to him. These are the people in the Empire who Vader obeyed. Because Vader's jurisdiction, while vast, had a very specific focus, he commanded the Imperial Military. This meant he controlled the armies, the fleets, the stormtroopers, and the full breadth of the Emperor's war machine. But he did not rule the political apparatus of the Empire. He did not preside over the civilian government, regional governance, or the internal mechanisms that maintained Palpatine's hierarchy. Palpatine ruled the Empire in its entirety. Vader ruled the military in his name. And this distinction creates a very small number of individuals who could legally or politically refuse Vader's orders without immediately signing their own execution warrant. The first is the Imperial Ruling Council. This is how they could refuse one of Vader's orders. The Imperial Ruling Council acted as the administrative spine of the Empire. They shaped policy, collected budgets, regulated sector priorities, and managed the civilian governments. Vader commanded the military, but the Imperial Ruling Council controlled the infrastructure that kept the military supplied and functioning. If Vader issued a command that clashed with the execution of the Emperor's policy, the Council could deny logistical support or redirect essential resources away from Vader's commands. They could pause troop movements, suspend projects, or challenge actions that contradicted directives already established by Palpatine. Their power to refuse came not from outranking Vader, but from occupying a branch of authority that he did not technically control. The Council could also deliver orders to Vader when these orders originated from the Emperor. In those cases, Vader obeyed because the directive was an extension of Palpatine's will. The Council was allowed to serve as a conduit for the Emperor when he was absent or preoccupied. But this authority came with a great danger. If a council member issued a command claiming it came from Palpatine, and Vader sensed deceit or political maneuvering, he never tolerated it. Vader did not obey the Council, he obeyed the Emperor, and if he suspected that the message came only from the Council and not from Sidious, he would kill the aides or agents that were delivering the order. Their deaths would serve as a reminder that only the Emperor could command the Dark Lord of the Sith. Then we have the Grand Moffs. Grand Moffs are not ordinary governors. They ruled entire oversectors, combining political, military, and economic authority across vast territory. They commanded not only the civilians, but also the broad operational control over regional military assets assigned in their domain. If Vader issued a directive that interfered with the Emperor's clearly defined chain of authority within an oversector, a Grand Moff could challenge it. They could restrict access to regional fleets, limit troop deployments, or deny logistical support that fell within their jurisdiction. But we have to make it clear, their refusal did not stem from personal power over Vader. It came from the legal authority granted to them directly by the Emperor in order to maintain stability across the sector. Few Grand Moffs would ever dare to push back against Vader. Tarkin is the primary example of a figure confident enough to do so without fear. Grand Moffs could only give commands to Vader in specific circumstances where Palpatine intentionally placed them at the head of a project, a region, or an operation that required a unified authority. The Death Star is the best example. Tarkin was placed in full control of the battle station, and as long as Vader operated aboard it, he followed the operational structure that the Emperor had created. This did not mean that Tarkin outranked Vader. It meant Vader recognized that Palpatine wanted the Death Star treated as Tarkin's command. If Vader ignored the structure, he would be undermining the Emperor's will. In any other setting outside of Palpatine's sanctioned projects, though, a Grand Moff giving Vader an order would be ignored or punished. Vader understood the purpose behind the role of a Grand Moff. They kept entire regions of the galaxy stable. They coordinated enormous military resources, and they executed political and military strategy across chunks of the galaxy that Vader could never micromanage. By respecting their authority within the defined jurisdiction, Vader upheld the efficiency of the Empire and the Emperor's plan. Vader also understood that Sidious demanded cooperation between political and military branches, choosing to honor the structure. Vader obeyed these limited directives not because he feared the Grand Moffs, but because he feared disrupting Sidious's will. Then we have the Royal Guards and the Sovereign Protectors, the most shocking on this list. The Emperor's Guardians existed in two distinct tiers. The standard Crimson Royal Guard were elite and feared, but they did not possess authority over Vader. Their purpose was to protect the Emperor, not to direct or restrict the Dark Lord. If Vader issued an order that conflicted with their duty to safeguard Sidious, they could refuse. But this refusal was tied only to the Emperor's protection. It did not stem from rank. However, the Sovereign Protectors stood on an entirely different level. These warriors existed closer to the Emperor than any political figure or military officer. They carried training, secrets, and ritual authority that placed them above the standard royal guard. If Vader gave an order that contradicted any instruction they had received from Palpatine, the Sovereigns could deny him without fear. Their loyalty was absolute. Their authority came directly from the throne. So how exactly could they give Vader an order? A command delivered by a standard royal guard was typically ignored, treated as an insult, or outright met with their execution by the Dark Lord's blade. Vader viewed them as ceremonial protectors, not emissaries empowered to direct him. A simple guard attempting to speak for the Emperor was a presumption Vader never tolerated. But when a Sovereign Protector appeared, everything changed. The arrival of a Sovereign Protector meant that the Emperor had issued a directive so sensitive that it required someone trusted beyond all question. The Sovereigns did not speak casually, they did not improvise, they did not carry opinions or political agendas. If a Sovereign delivered a message, it was understood to have come directly from the Emperor. In these moments, Vader treated the instruction as if Sidious were standing before him. He never questioned the order. He did not challenge the messenger. A Sovereign Protector carried the Emperor's voice without deviation or without dilution. Vader's tolerance came from a simple truth. The Sovereigns were not trying to govern him. They were not a part of the bureaucracy. They were not officers seeking to assert control. They were an extension of the Emperor's personal will, shaped to act without hesitation. Vader recognized that killing or ignoring a Sovereign would be the same as rejecting Palpatine. Their authority came from proximity, devotion, and the unbreakable link to Palpatine's own command. A message from a royal guard could be dismissed. A message from a Sovereign Protector was law. And now we have come to the Grand Admirals. How could they refuse one of Vader's orders? The Grand Admirals were the pinnacle of the Imperial Navy. They represented the Emperor's most elite strategic minds. Each one was chosen personally by Palpatine, which already placed them in a rare category similar to a Sovereign Protector. Their loyalty was also absolute. Their brilliance was proven. Their authority extended across fleets and sector groups on a galactic scale. Yet, even they could not refuse an order from Vader. He outranked them. As Supreme Commander, Vader sat above the entire military hierarchy. A Grand Admiral challenging Vader directly would be challenging the Emperor's design. The structure did not allow them to override the Dark Lord. But what they did do was question operational decisions, present alternatives, or guard their own strategic territories with enough legitimacy that Palpatine would sometimes side with them instead of Vader. Their influence came not from rank, but from trust. In truth, Grand Admirals could not give Vader orders at all. They held the highest naval rank beneath him, but they did not command the Supreme Commander. Vader followed no directive from a Grand Admiral unless it aligned with a larger strategy set by the Emperor. However, Vader did something with Grand Admirals that he almost never did. He listened. He took their counsel seriously. He respected their insight. He acknowledged their talent. And with Thrawn, he even recognized a level of strategic brilliance that rivaled the greatest military minds in history. So while they could not give Vader orders, they could influence him, they could shape the direction of campaigns, and they could present operational realities that Vader accepted because their competence was undeniable. They were the very few people in the Empire that Vader treated as worthy of genuine respect. Grand Admirals were among rare individuals. They were handpicked by Sidious. They had earned their place not through politics, but through unmatched military brilliance. Thrawn especially stood out. He understood war the way a Sith understood the Force. He perceived patterns. He saw through deception. He mastered enemies by learning who they were, not just where they stood. Vader recognized this instinctively. Thrawn was one of the few beings in the Empire whose accomplishments could not be denied or dismissed, and whose mind was sharp enough that even Vader acknowledged the value of having him at high command. Because of this unique respect, I believe it would not have been seen as an insult that after Vader's death, that high command would fall to Thrawn. In many ways, Thrawn was the only person within the Empire whose skill and merit could justify inheriting the position of the Supreme Commander. And if Vader had ever thrown Palpatine without taking an apprentice, it's entirely possible that he would have elevated Thrawn to that position anyway. Vader would need someone capable of commanding the Imperial war machine while he consolidated dark side power. Grand Admiral Thrawn was not a subordinate in a traditional sense. He was a potential partner in reshaping the galaxy. Vader never followed orders from him, but he respected him more than almost any other figure in the hierarchy. So to answer the question, who could order Vader around openly without any ambiguity? Who outranked Darth Vader in the Galactic Empire? The answer is only Emperor Palpatine. Despite the common fan belief that Vader existed outside of a hierarchy or floated in some strange space between civilian authority and military command, this is simply not true. Vader did hold an official rank. He was the supreme commander of the military. In an organized structure of the Empire, the only person who stood above him was the Emperor. But Palpatine loved to play games with his apprentice. He enjoyed forcing Vader to bow to people below him on the Imperial ladder. He wanted to test Vader's loyalty. He wanted to see if Vader would obey a command simply because the Emperor had chosen to speak through someone else. At times, Palpatine placed officers, bureaucrats, or guardians in temporary positions of authority over Vader just to watch him obey, to measure how tight the leash truly was. But these moments do not change the hierarchy. They do not make them Vader's superiors. They simply reflect Palpatine flexing his influence. But even this manipulation had limits. Vader was not a mindless servant. If someone stepped too far, they delivered a message that felt false, or they spoke with the Emperor's authority without holding back. Vader killed them without hesitation. He did so without fear, and did so sometimes with little consequence. Individuals like Tarkin show that despite this brutality though, it was possible to earn Vader's respect. Tarkin's doctrine became a cornerstone of the Empire and echoed the philosophy of the Sith. And even though Tarkin did not wield the Force, he sparred with Vader intellectually, politically, and sometimes even in the field. He proved himself worthy of Vader's regard. Vader obeyed the command structure of the Death Star out of that respect. Thrawn earned the same rare treatment. But beyond these few exceptional figures, earning Vader's respect was nearly impossible. Outside of that though, he did not need to show them any courtesy. He did not have to acknowledge their authority in any form. So now we are left with the most interesting question of all. Vader obeyed the Emperor above all others, but why did he allow himself to be tested by those beneath him? What were the true limits of his obedience? And how many commands delivered through intermediaries would he tolerate before the Dark Lord of the Sith decided that respect had been violated? And the only answer was death. So there you have it, my friends. The supreme commander of the Empire, Lord Vader. But what are your thoughts on this lore? What are your thoughts on Palpatine testing Vader? And the limits of Vader's obedience? As always, my friends, thank you so much for supporting the archives, and may the Force be with you.